Baron Kralitz. We greet you and pledge you, Franz, and we pledge the House of Kralitz." With that he caught up the goblet before him and held it high. All along the long table the black swathed ones arose, and each held high his jeweled cup and pledged me. They drank deeply, savoring the liquor, and I made the bow custom demanded. I said, in words that sprang almost unbidden from my mouth, "I greet you, who are the warders of the secret of Kralitz, and I pledge you in return." And all about me, to the farthermost reaches of the dim cavern, a hush fell, and the bellows and howlings and the insane titterings of the flying things were no longer heard. My companions leaned expectantly forward toward me. Standing alone at the head of the board, I raised my goblet and drank. The liquor was heady, exhilarating, with a faintly brackish flavor. And abruptly I knew why the pain-racked, ruined face of my companion had seemed familiar. I had seen it often among the portraits of my ancestors, the frowning, disfigured visage of the founder of the House of Kralitz that glared down from the gloom of the great hall. In that fierce white light of revelation I knew my companions for what they were. I recognized them one by one, remembering their canvas counterparts. But there was a change. Like an impalpable veil, the stamp of ineradicable evil lay on the tortured faces of my hosts, strangely altering their features so that I could not always be sure I recognized them. One pale, sardonic face reminded me of my father, but I could not be sure, so monstrously altered was its expression. I was dining with my ancestors, the House of Kralitz. My cup still held high, and I drained it, for somehow the grim revelation was not entirely unexpected. A strange glow thrilled through my veins, and I laughed aloud for the evil delight that was in me. The others laughed too, a deep-throated merriment like the barking of wolves, tortured laughter from men stretched on the rack, mad laughter in hell. And all through the hazy cavern came the clamor of the devil's brood. Great figures that towered many spans high rocked with thundering glee, and the flying things tittered slyly overhead. And out over the vast expanse swept the wave of frightful mirth, until the half-seen things in the black waters sent out bellows that tore at my eardrums, and the unseen roof far ahead sent back roaring echoes of the clamor. And I laughed with them, laughed insanely, until I dropped exhausted into my seat and watched the scarred man at the other end of the table as he spoke. "You are worthy to be of our company, and worthy to eat at the same board. We have pledged each other, and you are one of us. We shall eat together." And we fell to tearing like hungry beasts at the succulent white meat in the jeweled trenchers. Strange monsters served us, and at a chill touch on my arm I turned to find a dreadful crimson thing like a skinned child refilling my goblet. Strange, strange and utterly blasphemous was our feast. We shouted and laughed and fed there in the hazy light, while all around us thundered the evil horde. There was hell beneath Castle Kralitz, and it held high carnival this night. Presently we sang a fierce drinking song, swinging the deep cups back and forth in rhythm with our shouted chant. It was an archaic song, but the obsolete words were no handicap, for I mouthed them as though they had been learned at my mother's knee, and at the thought of my mother a trembling and a weakness ran through me abruptly, but I banished it with a draught of the heady liquor. Long, long we shouted and sang and caroused there in the great cavern, and after a time we arose together and trooped to where a narrow, high-arched bridge spanned the tenebrous waters of the lake. But I may not speak of what was at the other end of the bridge, nor of the unnamable things that I saw and did. I learned of the fungoid, inhuman beings that dwell on far cold Yuggoth, of the cyclopedian shapes that attend unsleeping Cthulhu in his submarine city, of the strange pleasures that the followers of leprous subterranean Yog Sothoth may possess, and I learned too of the unbelievable manner in which Lod the Source is worshipped beyond the outer galaxies. I plumbed the blackest pits of hell and came back laughing. I was one with the rest of those dark warders, and I joined them in the Saturnalia of horror until the scarred man spoke to us again. "Our time grows short," he said, his scarred and bearded white face like a gargoyle's in the half light. "We must depart soon. But you are a true Kralitz, Franz, and we shall meet again, and feast again, and make merry for longer than you think. One last pledge." I gave it to him. "To the house of Kralitz. May it never fall." And with an exultant shout we drained the pungent dregs of the liquor. Then a strange lassitude fell upon me. With the others I turned my back on the cavern and the shapes that pranced and bellowed and crawled there, and I went up through the carved stone portal. We filed up the stairs, up and up, endlessly, until at last we emerged through the gaping hole in the stone flags and proceeded, a dark, silent company, back through those interminable corridors. The surroundings began to grow strangely familiar, and suddenly I recognized them. We were in the great burial vaults below the castle, where the Barons Kralitz were ceremoniously entombed. Each baron had been placed in his stone casket in his separate chamber, and each chamber lay, like beads on a necklace, adjacent to the next, so that we proceeded from the farthermost tombs of the early Baron Kralitz toward the unoccupied vaults. By immemorial custom, each tomb lay bare, an empty mausoleum, until the time had come for its use, when the great stone coffin with the memorial inscription carved upon it would be carried to its place. It was fitting, indeed, for the secret of Kralitz to be hidden here. Abruptly I realized that I was alone, save for the bearded man with the disfiguring scar. The others had vanished, and deep in my thoughts I had not missed them. My companion stretched out his black swathed arm and halted my progress, and I turned to him questioningly. He said in his sonorous voice, "I must leave you now. I must go back to my own place." And he pointed to the way whence we had come. I nodded, for I had already recognized my companions for what they were. I knew that each Baron Kralitz had been laid in his tomb, only to arise as a monstrous thing, neither dead nor alive, to descend into the cavern below and take part in the evil Saturnalia. I realized, too, that with the approach of dawn they had returned to their stone coffins, to lie in a deathlike trance until the setting sun should bring liberation. My own occult studies had enabled me to recognize these dreadful manifestations. I bowed to my companion, and would have proceeded on my way to the upper parts of the castle, but he barred my path. He shook his head slowly, his scar hideous in the phosphorescent gloom. I said, "May I not go yet?" He stared at me with tortured, smoldering eyes that had looked into hell itself, and he pointed to what lay beside me. And in a flash of nightmare realization I knew the secret of the curse of Kralitz. There came to me the knowledge that made my brain a frightful thing in which shapes of darkness would ever swirl and scream, the dreadful comprehension of when each Baron Kralitz was initiated into the Brotherhood of Blood. I knew that no coffin had ever been placed unoccupied in the tombs, and I read upon the stone sarcophagus at my feet the inscription that made my doom known to me. My own name. Franz, 21st Baron Kralitz. End of The Secret of Kralitz by Henry Kuttner.